Okay, for more on this, we are now being joined by journalist and author Lynn O'Donnell. Thank you so much for joining us on WION. What are your thoughts on this admission by Pakistan's defense minister that Pakistan supported the United States in the Soviet-Afghan war by training and harboring armed militants for the fight against the Soviets?
Well, I don't think that that's anything new. What he's doing, though, is saying that putting this into a historical context and bringing it up to date and blaming others for it. Now, Pakistan was a willing contributor and participant in the war against the Soviets, who had invaded Afghanistan in 1978-9, around about then. And for 10 years, the United States and Saudi Arabia funded militants who were trained in Pakistan to go into Afghanistan to fight against the Soviet army, and that was an ultimately successful thing to do. There was no secret about that either. What has been kept secret and denied with great alacrity by the Pakistani authorities is their role in harbouring the Taliban throughout the 20-year war that the Taliban fought against the United States occupation of Afghanistan and the general Western military and diplomatic presence there. Throughout that conflict, the Pakistani authorities, the intelligence agency, the ISI, the army consistently said, we do not harbour the Taliban, even though the Taliban shuras were in Karachi, Peshawar, Quetta, and called as such. And the madrasas along the border there were packed, and they were basically feeders into the Taliban militia fighting on the ground. We know that now. So when Pakistani authority figures come out and say, well, we've been doing somebody else's dirty work for decades, it's yet again, I think, a deflection of responsibility by Pakistan's military hybrid civilian government. It's disingenuous, and again, it might be an admission that this is what Pakistan does, but saying that we're doing it for someone else, I think, is disingenuous in the extreme.
Yeah, it's very shocking, actually, when you think about it and the way you elaborate on it. Can you talk a little bit more about how Pakistan has been harboring terrorists and perhaps hobnobbing with terrorists? Even Osama bin Laden was found quietly living on Pakistani soil for decades, as you mentioned.
Yeah, not so much decades. He was found there in 2010, I think, after having fled over the border along with the Taliban leadership in 2001, after the 9/11 attacks on the United States that were committed by Al-Qaeda in collusion with the Taliban. That triggered a US invasion to push the Taliban out of power, and the Al-Qaeda operatives, including Osama bin Laden and Taliban leadership, then moved over the border into Pakistan, where they remained. Osama bin Laden until he was found living quietly, as you said, and peacefully in Rawalpindi, the garrison town outside of Islamabad. It's basically an army town. You know, all of the people living around Osama bin Laden were commissioned officers in the Pakistan military, and then the leadership of the Taliban stayed safe and sound in Afghanistan until the end of the war, which was brokered by the current US President, Donald Trump, when he was last president, effectively a surrender deal that put the Taliban back in power. Now, we saw then that Pakistani officials went with, greatly puffed up chests into Kabul to claim some, I would frame it as some level of victory, shared victory, that pretty soon turned sour. The Taliban very quickly became their own people. They quite regularly have firefights across the Pakistan border with Pakistan military, and are now harbouring the Pakistani Taliban in the same way that Pakistan harboured the Afghan Taliban while they are waging war against the Pakistani state. Now, Pakistan has got a lot of problems, not only the TTP fighting against the state, but they've got the unification of three Baluch separatist movements that are also now declaring themselves an army fighting against the Pakistani state. It's a deeply indebted government. It borrows money to pay interest on previous loans. Unemployment is through the roof. Brain drain is sucking all of the life out of the intellectual capacity of Pakistan. And now you have this, on one hand, the parliament in Islamabad denying any involvement, and on the other hand, the Deputy Defence Minister of Pakistan saying, well, we've been doing this for decades, but we're doing it for someone else. It's this ordinary business as usual, I would say, dichotomy of admit, deny, deflect, blame others. And I think part of, if I may just add, part of what this is about is also deflecting attention away from extremely poor governance in Pakistan. As your reporter said, a chosen government by the military, and everybody knows it. And the results are, well, we're seeing the results now.
Right, what we see on the ground. Lynn O'Donnell, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for that thorough analysis and helping us understand a little bit more in this aftermath of this tragedy. Really, I look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you for having me. Me too. Thanks.